Guys, how are you going? And welcome back to another video. So today on the channel I'd like to do a different kind of video. So over my channel history I haven't really done many Pokemon videos, which I honestly found quite odd because Pokemon is one of my favorite series ever, and honestly I play a lot of it. I've actually played almost every single main series game. While there have been a few that I have missed out on or haven't completed, I've almost played all of them, and that got me thinking, which ones are my favorite and which ones are my least favorite? And recently on YouTube, there's been a kind of trend of making tier lists for everything. And I thought it'd be cool today to make a tier list of all the Pokemon games to see how I would rank them. So today I've used the tier maker list. It's really simple to use. You just go and look up Pokemon tier lists. I had to scroll through for a while to find one I preferred, but this one's really good. So if you are looking to make your own tier list for your own channels or anything like that, I do recommend this one. Anyway, so without further ado, I'd like to get into the video. So, what I would first like to clarify is that throughout this video, I will be ranking all of them, and some will go in F tier, some will go in S tier. But this is unlike a normal tier list, whereas usually the ones in F tier would be really bad games. However, in my opinion, none of the Pokemon games are bad games. There are better ones and there are worse ones. So you got to look at each game relative to other games. So if a really good game, for example, is ranked in C tier, then a game ranked in D tier isn't a bad game, it's just not as good as the one in C tier. So it's really more just looking at what's better and what's worse, not really if they're good or bad games overall. It's more ranking them against each other, not completely. So for example, usually I would put something bad, like one of the really bad Pokemon spin-off games, for example, as an F tier. But just because I put a game here in the F tier doesn't mean it's as bad as Pokemon spin-off whatever. It's simply because it's not as good as a game I have above it. So without further ado now, I would like to start. So we'll be going in chronological order, which means we will start with Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow. So originally I wanted to try and find a tier list that had Yellow apart, but then I realized while it does add some improvements, it is basically the same game. So I will be including them together, but for the most part, I will let you know if Yellow's maybe a bit better. So Yellow, in my opinion, is a bit better, but it is different in the sense of how you play the game. However, with the overall mechanics and all that stuff, I do believe it is similar. However, I feel like I'm probably going to get a bit of hate for this, but I think Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow belong in D tier. Now, before everyone loses it because I've put Gen 1 in D tier, I would like to clarify that I really do think these games are good games, but they just have problems. They don't hold up well today. And that's where I think they differ from something like Gold and Silver and Crystal, because they still hold up. They're still good games. You can play them today. Whereas Gen 1, they're hard to play today, and they've got so many glitches that breaks the game. So honestly, I think that due to the amount of glitches that hold it back, Gen 1 is in a D tier. If it didn't have glitches, I would definitely put it in a B tier or even a C tier. And with the amount of glitches it has, it probably deserves to go in F tier, but I do understand that it is the first Pokemon generation, so it gets like some leeway. So that's why I'll be putting it in D tier. So moving on, we'll be going on to Pokemon Gold, Silver, and Crystal. So starting off with, this one's Crystal, and they're basically the same game. It's really just Suicune. And I would put these in C tier because they're a step up in terms of the glitches, and they have a lot of good new Pokemon, and you get to go back to Kanto. But again, they're primitive, they're not the best games, they do have their problems, especially in the Pokemon department in my opinion. While, as I said, I do feel there are some great Pokemon, it had a real problem with introducing a lot of one-offs that didn't really have anything useful to bring to the table, and a lot of the Pokemon that were cool, like it did introduce, such as Misdreavus, which was the only new Ghost type, and Kingdra, the only new Dragon type, or Houndour, which was a really cool Pokemon. They either couldn't be found till very late game, post game, or they had to be traded, which over time has been harder, and I feel like the Gen 2 and 3 games were the hardest to do trade evolutions because it was that time where people didn't use link cables as much, but we didn't have the Wi-Fi like from Gen 4 onwards to trade with. So that did make it quite hard. So that's why I put Gold, Silver, and Crystal in C tier. Moving on to Generation 3, I would put the Generation 3 games also, I would put them in B tier. Now, they're very close to being C tier. However, I feel Emerald pushes them up with the Battlefront tier. They fixed the games, and it was basically the first time ever where there wasn't major glitches. It introduced some major things to the Pokemon world, but they still did have its problems. They wasn't the best games. 7.8 out of 10. Too much water. But aside from that, they weren't the best games. They did have their problems, but I think they are better than Gold, Silver, and Crystal, and that's why I'll be ranking them higher. Moving on to Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum. Now, here's the one I have the hardest trouble with, because I actually think that Diamond, Pearl, Platinum are ranked completely different depending on which game you use. If I was to say this was Diamond and Pearl, I would probably put it in a C tier. Now, this would probably cause outrage. However, Platinum, I would easily put in an A tier. And in fact, it's scratching that S tier. But because this is all three games, I will be putting it in A tier. However, I would like to tell everyone that if they were split, Platinum would be S and Diamond and Pearl would probably be B or C. Purely because Diamond and Pearl, they did not run well. The Pokemon choices were absolutely abysmal. You couldn't get a majority of the new evolutions because they just weren't available. The only other Fire-type Pokemon other than Chimchar was Rapidash, which, don't get me wrong, isn't horrible, but it's not a great Pokemon. Meaning you were basically forced to choose Chimchar if you wanted a Fire-type, and then, which meant Piplup and Torterra were barely used, and it was just, so they had a lot of problems, pacing, story, they needed a lot of work, but Platinum came in and it fixed a majority of that. Just simple layout changes, the fix between the order of the gyms, it sped the game up, it gave you different Pokemon. It was just an overall great experience, and the addition of the Distortion World, and also it had even more post-game, I just think was a great addition, and I would actually put it in S tier if it was by itself. Moving on to the Generation 5 games, so Pokemon White and Pokemon Black. So these games are probably the hardest for me to place, because these were my first Pokemon games, so there is a lot of bias associated with them. These games, the Pokemon Black 2 and White 2 games, as well as Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver, were the first games I played overall, and they were the ones I do have the fondest memories with, and as a result, I tend to be a little bit biased towards them. However, I still feel that I'm trying to be as fair as possible, and I feel that Pokemon Black and White goes in A tier. Now, I think the reason I can put them here is a lot of people complain because of what they changed from previous generations. But because this was my first generation, I can look at it with, I think, a much more objective point of view, not having to look at what they took out or what they added, simply just what is in it and how I felt about it. And I honestly think this generation gets the most unfair reputation, and I think it's primarily based on two things. One, people are biased towards the Pokemon, and two, the anime. Now, the Generation 5 anime, I'm not going to lie, is one of the worst, if not probably the worst. As much as I didn't enjoy it, I can definitely see a lot of the faults in it. And unfortunately, it was shaped by a lot of unfortunate circumstances. However, I do feel that the poorness of the anime did contribute to people not liking the games, because it just added a sour taste to their mouth. But the main thing, I think, was the Pokemon. So the Pokemon in Black and White were all new Pokemon, and you couldn't catch old Pokemon until the post-game. And I think because all these Pokemon put in the spotlight, a lot of problems were brought up with them that maybe wouldn't have been seen if other Pokemon had been involved. But I think the idea of having a whole new region with all new Pokemon is great, because it forces people to actually use the Pokemon. They don't just get to use the same ones they've used over and over. I know that with every new Pokemon game I play, I struggle not to use the same Pokemon, because I know they're good, I know how to use them, and I like them. And a lot of them are available in most games, like Zubat and Crobat and Golbat. I use them all the time because Crobat is an amazing Pokemon and Zubat is so easy to get early on in the game. But in these games, you were forced to try something new, and I think it allowed a lot of people to enjoy these Pokemon a lot more. And while some will say they're uncreative, I completely disagree. I don't see how you can say that Muck and Grime are a good Pokemon, but then you can say Trubbish and Garbodor are not. So I think you have to judge them fairly. I don't think Generation 1 had a problem with Pokemon. They are monsters. They are creatures. Honestly, if we're going to go that far into my disbelief, then why can't we have an ice cream Pokemon? I get that some of the designs weren't great, like Druddigon, but there are designs from every single game that aren't great. I can go through and name you ones right now. Generation 2 had Dunsparce. Generation 1 had Pokemon like Pinsir, which I know most people like, but I don't like. But for an overall example, Pokemon like Mr. Mime. So many people don't like Mr. Mime, but no one really brings him up when talking about why Generation 1 isn't great. Even though they are good games, I think they suffer from other problems that are just due to their time. However, I still feel that it is unfair. So that's why I would put Pokemon Black and White there. And also they added in so many good new features. They streamlined the games by adding TMs being reusable, which I thought was a great addition. They added a bunch of new moves and a bunch of great new Pokemon, and they introduced just so many new ideas. They were the first ones to use 3D animations or assets in any bit, and I think it really adds a really nice, unique style to the game, and I just think they're great overall. Now, moving into Pokemon Black 2 and White 2. I think these games are S tier. These games brought everything from Pokemon Black and White, added in a new Pokemon, so you've already had the chance to use them in the previous game, so you're now acquainted with every single Pokemon available. They bring back your old favorites, they bring back the new ones, they add even more content, they refine the games, they add a whole new post game, which is just amazing. They had the Pokemon World Tournament, they add so many new areas, they add new gyms, they add new leaders, they add so much more story, and I just think that these games are just some of the best games ever introduced in Pokemon, and I think they're up there with Platinum. Now moving on to Pokemon X and Pokemon Y. I would place these games in B tier. Now these games were revolutionary, and I would consider arguing that these are the most important games in all of Pokemon's history. They brought it into the 3D era, and they introduced amazing features like Mega Evolution. And personally, I feel it was one of the most quality generations of Pokemon in terms of the designs. Now, while they didn't bring a lot to the table, I felt for the most part that all of the designs were great. There were a few standouts that were quite awful, like Swirlix and Slurpuff or Aromatisse. But they're one out of few, and plenty of people still enjoy those Pokemon. And I feel that it had overall one of the highest qualities of Pokemon in any game. Now, moving on, I will be talking about Pokemon Sun and Pokemon Moon. So, these games are really hard for me, because it took me an extremely long time to get through them, because I just did not enjoy playing them. I just found them extremely easy, and I hated the first island. It took me almost a week to get past it, of like just trying to play. And for reference, other games have taken me a week just to get through the whole thing because of how much I've loved them. But I just could not pick it up. It bored me. I thought it was easy. I didn't find the environments interesting. The new Pokemon, so many of them just didn't interest me like they had in the previous generations. And it's not because I thought they were bad. I just didn't think that a variety of them were great. They added Pokemon. They were completely unfair with the types, giving the fairy type so much attention and leaving out other types like the ice type, which got one new Pokemon that is questionable at most. And I did not really enjoy them, but I can admit that they had a lot of upsides. They have a really good anime, which I know is a bit divisive to say, but I personally enjoy the anime. I do like the slice of life format. And I don't really know, but I would probably, if it was personal enjoyment, probably put them in F tier because they're the ones I've enjoyed the least. But in terms of recognizing how good the games actually are, I probably would put them in D tier. But they're definitely worse than Pokemon Red and Blue, and that's why I'll put them in F tier. Now, I know this is probably not going to make a lot of people happy, but it's really just how I feel, so that's where they're going. Now, moving on, we have Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. I haven't actually played these games. I've played some of it, and I've played little bits, but after my experience with Pokemon Sun and Moon, and I knew the new Switch games were coming out, and I just got on a Switch, and I was really involved in playing those games, I just kind of skipped these games. I've played little bits on friends or family members' DSs, and I've heard that they're much better, but I don't really have much of a reference. But since I've been told that they're a massive improvement, I am going to put them in D tier. But actually, I'll put them in C tier. And that's because I don't have the connection to them. So if they have improved and I thought that really Pokemon Sun and Moon could have gone in D tier, if they've improved a lot, then I think C tier is probably a fair place for them to go. Now we'll start with the remakes. So firstly we have Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green. I think these games are a solid B tier. I think these games are really good games. I think they improve, and honestly, I would probably rate them up here. I think they're better than X and Y, and they're probably better than Ruby and Sapphire. However, they're not better than Emerald, and they're about the same as X and Y. So I put Emerald above X and Y and Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green, but I'm putting them in the middle of the three because they're about there in my opinion. I think they're really good games. They fixed a lot of the problems Gen 1 had. They added some new features, some new Pokemon. My main thing was that I didn't really feel they brought too much to the table. They brought the Sevi Islands, which I thought was a cool feature, but it didn't really expand onto much. So I thought they did a good job, but they didn't add anything amazing. You couldn't go to the Johto region, so I just feel they were good, but overall pretty decent games. They didn't suffer from a lot of the problems that Pokemon X and Y or Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire did. And honestly, if I had to say, I'd probably say that these are the most overall just average games. They're nothing really amazing, but nothing really bad about them. I just think they're overall good games. Now, Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver. I have said I'm biased, but I think we can all agree in these games that they belong in the S tier. They are one of the most sound Pokemon games ever. They took so many of the features from Diamond and Pearl, brought them over, refined an already great region in Johto, took out a majority of the problems, including the Pokemon problem, where Pokemon were placed. They added all the new evolutions. They added Pokemon following you. They expanded the story. They expanded the region. And honestly, I just think these games are the closest we've gotten to perfect. And I would put them above Pokemon Black 2 and White 2. They are the closest we've gotten to perfect. Because Black 2 and White 2 still have their problems. And there are faults. There are minor faults, but there are faults. But Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver, other than making it hard to access certain evolutions, there is very little problem I can think of. So the only evolution problem I can really think of is trying to get a Togekiss. It can be kind of hard to get a shiny stone. You can get it in the bug catching contest, but they're a bit hard to get them in, and you have to wait till you get Rock Climb, which there are a lot of areas that are only accessible through Rock Climb. And I feel that Rock Climb probably should have been something you got at the end of the Johto Elite Four rather than after Kanto, because I feel it would have opened up a lot of the areas of the game and it would have made a better game, but that's really all I can think of to fix. So moving on to our last games, we have Pokemon Alpha Sapphire and Omega Ruby. And I'll be putting them in the A tier. Sorry, they got stuck in the B tier. I'll be putting them in the A tier. I think they're an improvement from Pokemon X and Y and Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire. They're not as easy as X and Y. They look better than X and Y. They're absolutely gorgeous games, especially the soaring mechanic. They are wonderful to look at. And I think they improved on Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire in terms of story. I like how they included the Delta episode. That was a great piece of post game because it gave us something to do. I liked the Battle Island, but I wish they had brought back the Battle Frontier. That was really the main problem with the games, and they were still a bit too easy. They were really my main two issues with the games. So yeah, that's my Pokemon tier list. I hope you enjoyed it. If anyone's wondering why Let's Go Eevee and Let's Go Pikachu aren't on here, I kind of thought they were more side games, but I wasn't really sure, and they weren't included on this tier list, so I just didn't use them. But to let you know where I would put them, I'd probably put them around C or B tier because I can see the problems, but I can see the good things. I don't like how they left so much stuff out, but I do like how they look. The walking mechanic, I enjoy the catching mechanic because I felt that battling wild Pokemon did get a bit repetitive, and it was nice to like have that option, so where you could play the normal games or you could play Pokemon Let's Go Eevee and Pikachu. But yeah, I'd probably put them in the B or C tier if anyone's wondering. So yeah, I really hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, please drop a like. Comment what you thought down below, if you agreed with my rankings, if you disagreed with my rankings, if there's anything you think I missed that should have changed my rankings. And if you like the video, then please subscribe. I'm a small channel and every subscriber helps. So yeah, thanks for watching. I really hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks. Bye.